The Hitman Trilogy as a video game series has always been fascinating for a number of reasons. Apart from the really fun sandbox type of gameplay that IO Interactive has mastered, and the always spot-on sense of style by Agent 47, there's one more thing that really stands out: the superb cinematics. I'm not talking about its technical attributes, however. Even though it's superb, any development team who has the budget and manpower for it can create something of similar quality. Instead, we're going to focus our attention on their finely tuned shot composition and character acting. For the most part, game cinematics that have dialogue exchanges follow the basic guides of film language. We have the establishing shot that informs the audience of where the interaction is going to take place, then a series of over-the-shoulder shots as characters talk to each other. This is a staple of the art form, and there's nothing inherently wrong with it. But it's also the reason why people who manage to innovate at this kind of scene while following the basic rules tend to stand out. Just like this video that's up for discussion today, as hinted in the thumbnail. Before we begin, I checked out the credits roll of Hitman 1 to properly recognize the people behind it, and here they are. The cinematics team as led by director Peter Gornstein, and the video is officially titled The Secrets of the Global Elite. What we have here is an interaction between Viktor Novikov and Lucas Gray. In order to keep things simplistic, I'm not going into the details of their characters because it's not necessary. All we need to know as far as context goes is that they're both powerful people. Victor is the ringleader of a spy network, and Lucas is what's known as the shadow client, basically someone who's really good at making things happen through indirect manipulation. In this scenario, they meet up for an exchange of their services. In the later half of the conversation, it's made clear that these two are not on equal footing. One is clearly superior than the other, but it's not just the dialogue that revealed this. The entire presentation also displays this imbalance, even before they started talking, and that's why it's so interesting. In the previous episode, we saw in a painting how dominance and inferiority can be portrayed through the greater area superior subjects take up in a frame, as opposed to the other. It's one way of doing that if we wanted to show the discrepancy quite clearly. One example in a film similar to it would be in The Fellowship of the Ring, when Gandalf got angry at Bilbo Baggins for wanting to hold on to the magical accessory. In this case, Lucas may be superior to Victor, but initially they're both perceived as powerful individuals. So a more subtle approach at the beginning would suit better, until such time the scene reveals the true situation, which is exactly what they did. To start things off, we know that the scene happened in the gardens inside Victor's mansion, which on the surface gave him an advantage, seeing that the meeting took place within his territory. So the way the CGI director flipped it on its head is by setting the scene within a gazebo. This may be part of Victor's property, but at this very moment, it's as if Lucas is the host, who's patiently waiting for his visitor to approach. Notice at the beginning when Victor had to go through a couple of inconveniences moments before the meeting. There's the lights rain and the accompanying puddles that clearly annoyed him as he tries to whisk it off, as well as a small flight of steps. In any other context, if the script calls for Victor to walk in the rain, it's only natural that he should have an umbrella, or even better, a bodyguard that would carry it for him. The fact that those things are absent means it was an intentional creative decision by the director, with the goal of making him discomfortable, and therefore appear inferior in comparison to Lucas, who's high and dry and barely making any movements. This notion of making a person one would be dealing with experience discomfort is a known tactic of establishing dominance, and is observable in the real world. Remember back in 2007 when Russian President Vladimir Putin met with former German Chancellor Angela Merkel? He summoned his dog during the meeting, knowing full well that she has a fear of canines. In the world of video games, we can see the same strategy being utilized in Disco Elysium, for example. When Detective Harry and Kim met with Evar Claire, he's comfortably seated in a leather office recliner, while the former had to endure a folding steel chair that hurt his back.
So tell me, How can the head of the Debarders Union help a representative of the Revachol Citizens Militia today?
The chair you're sitting on has got to be the most uncomfortable chair in the world. It's violating your backside.
He even acknowledges it when Harry passes the skill check. Nice bit with the chair, by the way. A good way to keep your guests on edge.
Why, thank you. It's always nice when a fellow professional appreciates your work.
In addition to this, notice how Victor handles the folder. If we think about it for a second, a rich and dangerous leader like him is expected to hold such an item in a relaxed and confident pose, with the folder held on his side and his back straight. Instead, what we have here is the exact opposite, as he tensely clutches it on his chest while slouching. Maybe this was his futile attempt to protect it from the rain, but the reason for it doesn't matter. The important thing here is the optics, that the director intentionally made him do such a pose to perceive him as being slightly smaller in comparison to the other. I know this was intentional because it's inverted in the last shot of the scene, as we see Lucas hold the same item in a manner similar to what I mentioned earlier. Sometimes, the things we expect to see but are missing are just as powerful as the ones on display. When Victor greets Lucas with a question, notice the lack of a handshake.
How was Moscow?
Kamarov is gone. I set him up as a Langley spy. It's quite the scandal at the FSB.
It doesn't matter what the nature of one's business is. In Western and European societies, they do that as a friendly gesture. The fact that it's missing here already clues us in that this is not going to be a cordial scenario. As the dialogue rolls in, the imbalanced partnership is now made even more clear. First off, Lucas at the very least doesn't respect Victor, as he mentions what he did while his back is turned. Plus, there's the shot composition. We start off with a medium close-up, and as he turns around, the camera zooms into a close-up and his face is given ample screen time. But look at what happens when it's Victor's turn. He starts off with the same kind of shot, but as he moves closer to the camera, it immediately switches to a medium-wide shot, as if to downplay what he did. This is replicated by Lucas, who gives a smart retort before turning his back on him again.
The pen beats the sword, huh?
I have found that whoever wields the sword decides who holds the pen.
Victor, who's clearly bothered by this, reacts by shuffling around while looking at his watch, as if to express his desire to just finish the deal and get out of there as soon as possible. Going back to the medium-wide shot when he hands over the folder, we are given a couple of visual cues. From where the camera is positioned, Lucas is a bit closer to the front and makes him appear slightly larger than Victor, even though they're both about the same height. There's also the manner of how the folder was handed over. Notice how Lucas didn't immediately take it. Instead, he waited for Victor to extend his arm and make a slight lean before grabbing it, keeping his back straight and left arm held at a right angle. From here, it just gets progressively worse for Victor as he receives a couple of more insults. The fact that he didn't leave until Lucas dismissed him adds to the severity of the situation.
Smile, Victor. Your reputation is safe. Now run along. I'm sure you have pretty dresses to attend to. Victor, good luck with the show.
And now that the truth is laid bare, we finally get this, which perfectly encapsulates the balance of power among these two characters. Lucas takes up a huge portion of the frame, with the camera at a high angle looking down towards Victor, all while maintaining a commanding position within the pillars, and the other disappears in the background with his head down. This is a well-crafted cinematic that I assume required a lot of forethought. You see, film language as a guide can only take us so far that would give us the basics of shot compositions. But when it comes down to the motivation behind using them, it's all relative to what we're trying to portray, which means there's really no user manual for it. The allure of doing it straight just using the established fundamentals is strong, So I'm glad that IO Interactive took the time to figure this one out and came up with something that's worth rewatching.